Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Transformation Week 2020, which is hosted by MediaCom. This is the third time that Transformation Week has taken place, and we are delighted that this year it has still been able to go ahead, albeit virtually. Never before has a theme of transformation seemed more relevant, and we really hope that you are able to take some useful learnings away from today's session with Catherine Jacob and Karen Stacey. A quick note on housekeeping that questions can be asked via the below panel throughout the session, and time dependent, we will endeavour to have those answered by our panelists. So moving over to our first speaker today, I'd like to introduce Karen Stacey, the CEO of DCM.
Thank you, Thomas, and welcome everybody. So when we were thinking about this today, Catherine and I sort of both agree that there's absolutely nothing like the experience of a great movie to transform you to a different place, or certainly a state of mind. So we all know that great content provides context that makes advertising work really hard. And we would argue that we've got some of the best content to drive your context going forward. So just quickly, we've not had a lot going on this year, but we just want to whet your appetite for 2021. In the first half of the year, we start off with Nomadland, which is a Venice Golden Lion winner already, a Toronto winner, and we think it's going to be a big hit for the award season. There's something about Jamie is coming from the West End to the big screen. The Kingsman, which was moved from September this year, falls into the first half of next year. And No Time to Die, the long-awaited last Daniel Craig movie, we believe is going to be the biggest thing in AV in the first half of next year. To put that into sort of media language, the James Bond movie will do at least 20 ABC One TVRs. Then we've got A Quiet Place 2, Cruella, played by Emma Stone, moving on from a scene in her star in La La Land. And Luca is the new Disney Pixar in the middle of the year. Catherine, have you got the rest of the year?
Indeed, I do. You'll pop H2 up, please. That would be great. So, as you'd expect, the summer is full of tentpole movies to get families back, and recent success over the October half term has proved that when you've got content, families will turn up to watch film. So we're kicking off with Top Gun Maverick, which isn't actually the nickname of Jeff DeBurka from MediaCom, but is in fact the return of Tom Cruise in his iconic role. And then you've got some other follow up like Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, which made me laugh so much I lost my mascara when I saw the first one. Timothy Chalamet, our own boy crush, in June, which was delayed from December this year. And then you've got fantastic delivering those. There's Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise. And then West Side Story with Anson Elford, which we got as well. And then new character Adam finishes off the year. Back to you, Karen.
So you would have seen that there's a recent study by Kantar called Media Reactions. And what this study has done is looked at as a research into how audience react to their reactions and their attitudes to advertising and advertising in the context of the medium too. The study then what they did is roll this up to provide an overall ad equity metric. And they place cinema advertising as the #1 for global ad equity from this study. Now, what they put this down to was very much the high quality, fun and entertaining side of how people perceive the ads in the cinema, which I guess is the message we want overall. They also noted that what cinema doesn't suffer from is being too intrusive, being dull, or having excessive ad volumes or excessive targeting. And we know from the AA research on trust and trust in advertising that bombardment is one of the biggest drivers for lack of trust in the industry, which we are all trying to address. The other aspect, we can go to the next slide, Thomas, is there was an interesting comparison between what consumers want from advertising and the environment and what marketeers think consumers want. Again, you can see here, cinema is the #1 global preference for consumers, but it doesn't even appear in a top 5 for marketeers. There's no doubt that sort of the key finding, I guess, is that the medium is also part of the message. It's not just about the numbers. It's understanding the attitudes of people as they're consuming this advertising, and actually the context can really make or break a campaign if you choose to ignore it. Back to you, Catherine.
So it's interesting that the view about customers' relationships with brands and how that's shaped by media is reflected in this Catherine Kehoe quote, which is where brands are showing empathy and humanity, they get a disproportionate pull with consumers. Next slide, please. So if you look at the statistics for cinema, 74% of adults believe that cinema lets them escape from everyday life. And crikey, we'd all like that at the moment, wouldn't we? Next slide, please. And also the uniqueness of cinema is also really prevalent in this study. You cannot replicate the cinema experience in any other way. So we're a trusted medium delivering a unique experience that really resonates with consumers. Next slide, please. And that trust element that Karen talked about, which is so important to drive perception of advertising. 61% of consumers trust cinema advertising, and also it's got a premium nature. So if you're a brand that's advertising on cinema, you're benefiting from that mutuality of being in a trusted medium that is also seen as somewhere that's premium. And the ads are part of the cinema experience for so much of our audience. Next slide, please.
So now on to just a couple of case histories. I guess the great thing we have within the cinema industry is that we are probably the only media owner that knows our content 18 months out. We know the style of the content, and we know also probably the cultural moments that it could produce. Now, this is really helpful when you're trying to solve a client's problems. And this example for BT is a great one for that. So BT wanted to showcase their flexible nature of their TV offering is that you only pay for what you watch. So we came up with an idea for them, which is there probably wouldn't be a better example of being a bit hacked off if you saw a film that you hadn't paid for. So when you go into the cinema and you pay to go and see Tenet, you don't expect to see The Secret Garden. What we did is we picked out some films to work with BT on, and then we created some bespoke content with a production company called Recipe that we played out across Cineworld and View. This one recently a silver at the Media Week Awards for Essence, but I'm just going to play you the case history, which tells the story much better than I could.
not here to watch this, are you? You wouldn't pay for something you don't want to watch in the cinema, so don't put up with it at home.
It actually kind of made me feel like I may have walked into the wrong movie theater. I didn't think it was enough to start with.
Service where you can tap in and out of things is something I talk to my friends about. Stacks.
I think it was targeted perfectly.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's absolutely something that I'd want.
Now, enjoy the film you're really here to see.
I think you all agree that was a really sort of outstanding piece of creative work and made bespokely for cinema. But I now just want to talk about Wagamama's, which, to be honest, is just a really good bit of good media communication planning, which won a bronze at the IPA. Where Wagamama's wanted to do was, where all around them in the casual dining sector, their competitors were discounting, and they wanted to focus on the brand of Wagamama's and the quality of the food. So they chose cinema to be the lead medium for them. And what we did for them was we created a completely geo-targeted cinema campaign to choose just screens and cinemas that were a 15-minute drive from Wagamama's, and then play bespoke pieces of content for them across our cinema estates. The results speak for themselves in the overall sales of the Wagamama's that were near to these cinemas went up by 12%, delivering almost 500,000 incremental customers across 2019. And the return on investment was £10.80 for every £1 invested. It just goes to show, and this was sort of immediate uplift. And I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't think of cinema as driving short-term sales, but this is a great example of using, in the right content, in the right context, geo-targeted in a special way, can increase your sales immediately and give you a real short-term return on investment. Catherine.
Yeah, I think building on that Wagamama thing, Karen, is the fact that if you'd have turned around to most planners or clients and said, okay, we're in this sector, we're going to use cinema, they would have been really, really surprised. And I think it was great reading the IPA judges' comments, where so much of their feedback about Wagamama's was the fact that because they were slightly different and they treated the medium as the basis of that campaign, it over-delivered. So I love the idea that cinema can be challenging kind of conventions in spend. I think that was really, really great. So on to a much beloved client of cinema, which is Tesco. We've enjoyed a beautifully harmonious relationship with them and Mediacom, of course. And aside from their Christmas activity, another activity that we've run for them, in the summer, we work with them to deepen their relationship with both colleagues in store, but also the general public as well. So we could go to the next slide. So what we did with Tesco was we addressed the issue of, crikey, we're all bored. According to Mediacom, apparently we were 44% more bored than we were at the start of the last round of lockdown. And we partnered with Adventure Drive-In and Tesco, and they got a high level of branding on site. It was a fully immersive Tesco experience, including, their own product and Tesco screenings to reward staff as well. And I think this is a great living example of Tesco's mantra of every little helps, because every little bit of cinema certainly helped Tesco. So if you could look at some of the pictures, that would be great. This is the drive-in. Not quite sure what that film is. That could be a quiz for later on. Obviously, you have to have a Tesco popcorn stop, don't you? I mean, it's just really obvious. And then there's one of the completely COVID-safe volunteers walking around and delivering Tesco products to cars. So let's see what consumers thought about it. Next slide, please.
It's fantastic, giving people something else to do, particularly during the holiday season, because obviously with COVID, etc.
It's nice to be able to get out and to be in an environment where you're outside, you feel safe, and I think it being sponsored by Tesco makes you feel really valued as a customer as well.
Thumbs up, definitely. Every little helps, and it really does.
I'm actually so happy and so excited that Tesco has put this on. They've been amazing throughout this whole situation, and I can't fault them.
Now, the thing I really love about that is that the idea that people feel valued as a customer because of their cinema, you know, their big screen experience, and having your mantra played back to you when people are watching the film. It's just great. And I think that just shows how the trust and the premium quality that people associate with cinema is intrinsic to building brand equity, or building even more on the great brand equity that Tesco has. So looking outside of those drive-in experiences, next slide, please. What you can see is cinema goers have returned, have had a great experience. So 93% would recommend the cinema experience to others. Now, so much is talked about in terms of word of mouth. I think any brand that got 93% word of mouth recommendation would probably, you know, be drinking champagne out of their shoes at this moment, but they enjoyed a great outing. And so that's why we're so hopeful for what's going to happen when cinema returns in full, whenever, you know, COVID and government regulations allow, because we know what we're delivering is a great brand experience, both for brands and media planners and the customers that are going through our doors. So just a quick recap on the 2021 slate. So you're starting off with the usual joy of awards ceremony, Nomadland. Nothing, well, there probably will be quite a lot of people walking through the United States looking for a purpose in life. How recent is that film? A bit of a sing-along with Jamie. Jeff de Burker's return as Top Gun Maverick. And then Karen and I will be dancing in the aisles during West Side Story. And I think we have one question. Do you want to answer that, Karen?
Oh, I can't see it from my screen.
It is, with all of the films moving into 2021, do you think there could actually be too many films packing the year?
Well, you could argue that you can never have enough films, and it's amazing. There's usually around 800 films in any given year. I think they will be given time to breathe. I think we will, you know, the cinema admissions have been pretty steady for the last 10 years, around 177 million each year in the UK. And we'd love to get back there as quickly as possible. I think what's been proven, though, if they do move, they will just move back to the following year, because that's what most of the studios have done.
Yeah, I think it's the other thing as well, which is it's the opportunity it gives you to do specific targeting. So, you know, that whole thing where, you know, we do serve a huge, you know, 16 to 34 audience, but also certain films that come out, if you look at 1917 or if you look at Death on the Nile, serve up that kind of upmarket older audience that advertisers want. And I think your contextual thing, as well as the targeting thing, kind of plays into this as well, which is you can pick the content and the audience that you want, rather than it just being a massive kind of very, you know, disjointed content put up in front of you. It enables you to pick and choose, you know, and have those experiences that are right for your brand, or maybe push your brand in a different way. So I think that's the other thing as well, is rather than it just being, you know, a small number of tentpole releases, it allows you actually relatively cheap
variety.
Yeah, to target certain very specific audiences, and just think of the joy that would give to creative teams trying to find films that match a mood or match a viewpoint from a specific brand. I think, you know, that's one of the things that you and I have talked about a lot in terms of when we're talking to clients, is the breadth of offering as well. Yeah. You know, it's not an either or, it's not either too many films and you don't get, you know, I think the more films actually the better, because you know, the way that cinemas plan their playlists is orientated towards maximizing the audience. So I think that's the answer to that question. Oh, and there's another one as well. Are there plans for any more drive-ins? Anonymous attendee asks. Yes, there are. There'll be Christmas drive-ins, festive drive-ins this year. And I think there was such a success that I think, yes, there will be. I mean, I always think it's quite remarkable that they always do so well in the States and they've never really taken off in the UK. So it's taken this to kind of make it resonate with audiences. One question I was going to ask you, Karen, is that, you know, on that Wagamama success, you know, of all those sectors, you know, I think that interesting thing about how we're going to work together to kind of challenge some of those kind of wrongly held beliefs about what we can do for, you know, brands that are in a slightly different non-cinema space. And I think, you know, I know you've got strong views on that. What's your perspective on that in terms of people who could benefit? I mean,
yeah, so I think the three examples we used hopefully just gave evidence of we know we do long-term branding really well and tell stories really well. I would urge people to push us to make more bespoke content for cinema. As I said, we know our content far in advance, and we can work with advertisers to create great content in the right environment, and the price of it is, and it's not expensive to do. I really hope the Wagamamas has proved that this whole term, are you doing long-term or short-term branding, or, you know, short-term effects? Great branding, great advertising works both short-term and long-term. And I think the Wagamamas shows you that if you just do great advertising, you get an immediate uplift in sales. I think it was cleverly planned. So there was no wastage. But I think that gives you the example of that. And then I think the drive-in and the stuff done with Tesco shows the experiential as well. Even in these sort of COVID testing times, you can get round it. So I think rather than just thinking of us in one basket, think of us in, challenge us to come up with a solution for you, whether it's short-term, whether it's long-term branding, whether it's bespoke content or a new creative idea. I think we've all spoken about, you know, we're really lucky that our pre-shows are in our control. So if you want to make a great piece of long content that's really applicable to a certain film or a certain target audience, we can do that. We regulate ourselves in the amount of content we do. And then we've got the experiential too. So
another question too, which is, what is your message for nervous marketers to re-engage or make a first foray into the media of cinema? Well, I think it is that we've got enough case histories between us to prove the worth of cinema on the slate, and the fact that, you know, we are a flexible medium, and to your point, which is challenges, because I think that we've got the content and the attitude that will enable us to deliver us for brands, big, small or medium. Would you like to make the final point so we can let people skip off to their 12 o'clock appointments?
I would just echo what you said. I just think we are quite an untapped medium, and our core proposition is just getting stronger, not weaker. We have the most amazing content in a darkened room with an audience looking forward, where you're completely uninterrupted and you've paid to be there. And I'd like to see more advertisers understanding the power that can do to move consumers to buy more stuff, which is what we want people to do.
Exactly. I couldn't have put it better myself. So on behalf of Karen and I, we're starting to sound like a double act. It's quite I thought we were. And even though Karen put a dress on and I put lipstick on, we decided not to bother you. But she's looking gorgeous, can I tell you? We'd just like to say on behalf of the Cinema Medium, thank you. And thank you very much to MediaCom for hosting us.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.